Hi everyone, welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host and researcher, Louisa. Today is Saturday, October 17th, 2020. This is GoldFish Report number 592, and it's week 193 POTUS Report. This is 17 days until the election on November 3rd, so it's crunch time. I'm still kind of taking a step back, trying to take care of my health, so I'm not doing live streams right now. I miss doing live streams with everybody, but I'll be back as soon as I'm feeling better. I'm, on the mend. So let's get this started. There's a lot to talk about. The president actually has a rally, and that's, interfering in a sense with the time anyway. So let's start. West Wing reads, we have Trump on the right side of history in confronting Latin America's dictators. The brutal regimes in Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua pose a grave threat to our country's national security interests. We must continue to consistently deny funds to these regimes and work together to oppose their people. Which work together to oppress their people. Sorry, see, this is why I need to take a break. Wreak havoc in our hemisphere and oppose U.S. interests. Okay, according to the Miami Herald. The Trump administration has responded effectively to this reality, marginalizing these intertwined dictatorships while supporting humanitarian and pro-democracy efforts for the populations they oppress. Okay. Politics has become such vicious blood sport that Judge Amy Coney Barrett said her family had discussed whether she should accept Trump's nomination. We knew our lives would be combed over for any negative details, she said. America is beyond lucky that such extraordinary people still answer the call to public service, according to the New York Post. This year's corporations and activists have been waging a media and boycott campaign against Facebook to demand it censor more content. Of course they have, right? Facebook joined Twitter in suppressing links to a New York Post story. The better response would be, let the story's facts and sources be debated rather than suppress it, the Wall Street Journal editorial board writes. The United States is investing over $480 million for a new coronavirus test that produces results in about 20 minutes. Without needing to be processed at a lab, Will Feuer reports. The test is already in use by a number of clients, including the National Basketball Association, which successfully played out its season. Interesting. Here, the president talks about slashing red tape to save lives. Let's listen to what the president has to say.
When the China virus arrived, we launched the largest mobilization since World War II. To defeat the virus, I'm breaking through every obstacle, cutting every piece of red tape, and moving heaven and earth. The FDA has been fantastic. They're approving things in 1 week that would have taken 2 years. I'm not interested in making friends in the corrupt media, and it is corrupt. My sole focus is protecting American lives and making lives good for American people. We'll beat this virus and we'll eradicate this pestilence and all of the things that happen to our country, our lives, and our planet. When the China virus arrived, we launched a large...
So there you have it from the president. And let's go back to the blog. Continue. Okay, there's remarks. This is a transcript. As you know, I don't read the transcripts. Okay, we have a statement from the press secretary regarding the national strategy for critical and emerging technologies. This is quite a bit. Today's President Trump released the National Strategy for Critical and Emerging Technologies, which outlines how the United States will promote and protect our competitive edge in fields such as artificial intelligence, energy, quantum information, science, communication and networking technologies, semiconductors, military and space technologies. As our competitors and adversaries mobilize vast resources in these fields, American dominance in science and technology is more important now than ever, and it is vital to our long-term economic and national security. The United States will not turn a blind eye to the tactics of countries like China and Russia, which steal technology, coerce companies into handing over intellectual property, undercut free and fair markets, and surreptitiously divert emerging civilian technologies to build up their militaries. The Trump administration's critical and emerging technology strategy establishes priority actions to protect our national security innovation base and secure our technology advantage by strengthening rules where gaps exist, insisting that agreements be enforced, and working with like-minded allies and partners to promote, advance, and ensure the success of our common principles. This administration continues to defend our industry, addresses unfair practices, and level the playing field for American workers. Our strategy also emphasizes the importance of promoting the national security innovation base. Under President Trump, the United States has already made historic progress in this area. From the American AI Initiative to the National Quantum Initiative, the Trump administration has taken bold action to accelerate our leadership in the technologies underpinning the industries of the future, announcing unprecedented research and development investment, removing regulatory barriers to innovation, developing the highest quality American workforce, and building strong relationships with like-minded allies and partners. The National Strategy for Critical and Emerging Technologies lays the foundation for the United States to continue to turn ideas into innovations, to transform discoveries into successful commercial products and companies, and to protect and enhance the American way of life for many years to come. The President also issued a proclamation on Blind Americans Equality Day. And this is something you can come to the blog to take a read, to read for yourself. But just in general, on Blind Americans Equality Day, we recognize the valuable contributions of our fellow Americans who are blind or visually impaired. These individuals enrich our national economy and culture through their determination, courage, and strength. Today, we reflect on the progress our nation has made in removing barriers that have prevented the full participation of blind and visually impaired persons in our society, and we reaffirm our unwavering commitment to defend the inherent dignity of all Americans. You can come to the blog and read more of this release and more about their background and more regarding this proclamation at thegoldfishreport.blogspot.com. Here we have President Trump takes questions on the economic recovery. During President Trump's first 3 years in office, incomes for the average American family grew by $6,000, more than 5 times the gain seen during the entire Obama administration. Then 9 months ago, the coronavirus plague spread across the world. Despite gloomy predictions that the U.S. economy would see double-digit unemployment far into the future, America has witnessed its fastest recovery in history under President Trump. Under the previous administration, it took 30 months to recover more than half the jobs lost in the crisis. President Trump told the economic clubs of New York, Florida, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Pittsburgh, Sheboygan, Wisconsin this morning in a virtual address from the Rose Garden. We surpassed that milestone in fewer than 5 months. During his remarks and a subsequent Q&A session, the president talked about the fast economic recovery, his administration's massive coronavirus response, and the strategy to protect vulnerable Americans while safely reopening our country for the young and healthy. Trust the American people. Americans should be trusted with the facts, the data, and the truth. For the young and healthy, the risk is exceedingly low. 99.98% of those under the age of 50 survive. That's why we're so focused on protecting elderly and high-risk Americans. End mass lockdowns. The unscientific lockdowns pushed by left-wing politicians are needlessly destroying millions of lives through suicides, delayed health care, and more. The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. Keep up historic action. The Trump administration has sent over 160 million stimulus checks, provided over $650 billion in forgivable loans to American small businesses, and protected 50 million jobs, increased unemployment benefits, froze student loan payments, and stopped evictions and suspended payroll taxes. Help the working class. My policies have benefited those who need it the most. The bottom 50% of households saw an astonishing 40% increase in net worth. Wages rose the fastest for blue-collar workers. Come back stronger than ever. We will continue our V-shaped recovery and launch a record-smashing economic boom. We will end the pandemic with a safe and effective vaccine and create 10 million jobs in the first 10 months of 2020. No one predicted the kind of great American comeback that President Trump has led. During both his first 3 years in office and following the worldwide coronavirus outbreak earlier this year. At the end of the last administration, the Congressional Budget Office projected fewer than 2 million jobs would be created in 3 years, he said. Instead, the Trump economy created 7 million of them. Now, America is rapidly recovering from the pandemic with 11.4 million jobs created since May. To continue that historic boom, President Trump is ensuring that medical and pharmaceutical supply chains are reshored, that federal contracts are stripped from companies that outsource jobs, and that American health care is protected, including Medicare and insurance for patients with pre-existing conditions. We are lifting up citizens of every race, color, religion, and creed, President Trump said today. We are delivering a future of fairness, justice, and dignity. We are defending our values, our principles, and our way of life. The best is yet to come. This is a video clip by President Trump. Let's hear what he has to say.
We're lifting up citizens of every race, color, religion, and creed. We're delivering a future of fairness, justice, and dignity for every community in our land. And we're defending our values, our principles, and our cherished way of life. And guided by these timeless convictions, we will make next year one of the single greatest years in the history of our country.
That's what the president had to say about that. So we're going to go back to the blog and see what else we have in terms of the news. So here we have the president's full address. There is a link here on the blog. You can go and check that out if you'd like. And here we have a photo of the Marine One carrying President Trump lifts off from the South Lawn, which is really a wonderful sight to see. And I've had the wonderful privilege of being there reporting and seeing that for myself. And it's really historic, folks. You really understand the gravity of it when you're there, and how grateful I am for that opportunity. President has approved the North Carolina disaster declaration. This is regarding debris removal of emergency protective measures under the state of California as a result of wildfires beginning August 14th, 2020 and continuing. So there's also a disaster declaration for North Carolina. This is continuing from Hurricane Isaias. And of course, we have Democrats are asking Amy Coney Barrett to violate Ruth Bader Ginsburg's judicial standard. Senate Democrats know that judicial nominees cannot and should not express their personal views on controversial political issues that could come before the courts. Doing so would make them appear biased and unable to do their job, Kaylee McGee writes in the Washington Examiner. Democrats should instead use their time to ask Barrett questions about her past court opinions in which she has expressed her legal views, but they seem bent on avoiding Barrett's record, perhaps because they know it speaks for itself. President Trump's First Step Act corrected many of the injustices of the Clinton crime bill and others. Richard Johnson writes, of the inmates, the law helped 91% have been Black and 98% are male. Thousands of Black men are now back home because of President Trump's policies. They're being fathers, husbands, sons, and brothers, restoring lives and families and communities. Yesterday, President Trump signed an executive order establishing the United States 1 Trillion Trees Interagency Council, which will not only expand on the recreational and economic benefits that forests provide our nation's citizens, but also work to improve the global environment for future generations. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Chris Liddell writes for Fox Business News. Federal customs officers working at the border crossing between California and the Mexican city of Tijuana seized 3,000 pounds of meth from a commercial truck, making it the second largest bust in history on the United States-Mexico border. Anna Giritelli reports, smugglers will try every way possible to try and get their product across the border, one border official said. You can read more in the Washington Examiner. First Lady Melania Trump writes, my personal experience with COVID-19. It was 2 weeks ago when I received the diagnosis that so many Americans across our country and the world have already received. I tested positive for COVID-19. To make matters worse, my husband and our nation's commander-in-chief received the same news. Naturally, my mind went immediately to our son. To our great relief, he tested negative, but again, as so many parents have thought over the past several months, I couldn't help but think, what about tomorrow or the next day? My fear came true when he was tested again and it came up positive. Luckily, he is a strong teenager and exhibited no symptoms. In one way, I was glad the three of us went through this at the same time so we could take care of one another and spend time together. He has since tested negative. I was very fortunate as my diagnosis came with minimal symptoms, though they hit me all at once and it seemed to be a roller coaster of symptoms in the days after. I experienced body aches, a cough, and headaches, and felt extremely tired most of the time. I chose to go to a more natural route in terms of medicine, opting more for vitamins and healthy food. We had wonderful caretakers around us, and we will be forever grateful for the medical care and professional discretion we received from Dr. Conley and his team. It was an unfamiliar feeling for me to be the patient instead of a person trying to encourage our nation to stay healthy and safe. It was me being taken care of now and getting firsthand experience with all that COVID-19 can do. As the patient and the person benefiting from so much medical support, I found myself even more grateful and in awe of caretakers and first responders everywhere. To the medical staff and the resident staff who have been taking care of our family, thank you doesn't say enough. Recovering from an illness gives you a lot of time to reflect. When my husband was taken to Walter Reed as a precaution, I spent much of my time reflecting on my family. I also thought about the hundreds of thousands of people across our country who have been impacted by this illness that infects people with no discrimination. We are in unprecedented times, and with the election fast approaching, it has been easy to get caught up in so much negative energy. It also cheered me to think of all the people I have met across our country and the world, and the goodness and compassion that exists if you seek it out. Our country has overcome many hardships and much adversity, and it is my hope COVID-19 will be another obstacle we will be able to tell future generations we overcame and learn from in the process. I encourage everyone to continue to live the healthiest life they can. A balanced diet, fresh air, and vitamins really are vital to keep our bodies healthy. For your complete well-being, compassion and humility are just as important in keeping our minds strong. For me personally, the most impactful part of my recovery was the opportunity to reflect on many things: family, friendships, my work, and staying true to who you are. I am happy to report that I have tested negative and hope to resume my duties as soon as I can. Along with this good news, I want people to know that I understand just how fortunate my family is to have received the kind of care that we did. If you are sick or if you have a loved one who is sick, I am thinking of you and will be thinking of you every day. I pray for our country and I pray for everyone who is grappling with COVID-19 and any other illness or challenges. Thank you to everyone who reached out and offered well wishes and prayers for our family. You remain in ours as well. So that was a letter written by the First Lady. We had several memorandums by the president's physician last week. It's probably old news by now, but I'm going to continue. Wow, there's still a lot more to report on. So So Amy Coney Barrett says, I have an agenda to stick to the rule of law. It was day 2 of Judge Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation hearings for the U.S. Supreme Court. As expected, Judge Barrett is proving that she understands our Constitution and the importance of separation of powers far better than Senate Democrats do. Since fewer than 1/3 of Americans want the Senate to reject Barrett's nomination, Democrats have made their strategy clear: distraction. Rather than question Judge Barrett's credentials, which are outstanding and have received bipartisan praise, they are trying to disrupt the process with yet another fight about Obamacare. Of course, it's not a judge's job to make policy. Amy Coney Barrett knows that. Courts are not designed to solve every problem or right every wrong in our public life, she said yesterday. The policy decisions and value judgments of government must be made by the political branches elected by and accountable to the people. Interesting. Here's a little clip that is very interesting from, let's listen to this. Very interesting clip. Give me a second, come back.
Most of us never
responsibility to the courts have a vital responsibility to the rule of law, which is critical to a free society. But courts are not designed to solve every problem or right every wrong in our public life. The policy decisions and value judgments of government must be made by the political branches, elected by and accountable to the people. The public should not expect courts to do so, and courts should not try. That is the approach that I have strived to follow as a judge on the Seventh Circuit.
Imagined it could happen in this country, and yet today it did happen.
Courts have a
major American newspaper published a story, apparently an entirely accurate story, about a presidential candidate. The tech monopolies that control American media feared this story might hurt that candidate, whom they...
Well, that is a big, big, big story, and we're going to not report that because it's not part of our POTUS report. But that was just the clip from Amy Coney Barrett. Okay, so here we have keeping politics out of the courtroom is at the heart of our Constitution's separation of powers. And this has been a topic that I've been talking about over the past week quite a bit on the GoldFish Report regarding the accountability of the 3 branches of government, particularly the judicial system or the judiciary, who seem to police themselves and where they're not accountable to the American people, which is an issue, or at least it appears that way. It ought not be that way, but this is very interesting, the distinction that she's making here, and we will talk about it more in the days ahead. If Senate Democrats don't want to believe Judge Barrett or their Republican colleagues, they should at least heed the words of the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. A judge sworn to decide impartiality can offer no forecasts, no hints for what would show not only disregard for the specifics of the particular case, it would display disdain for the entire judicial process, Ginsburg said during her 1993 confirmation hearings. Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Elena Kagan, Samuel Alito, and Stephen Breyer all respected this standard and declined to comment on issues that might come before the court. So why are Democrats pressing Judge Barrett to do the opposite? Simple. It was all cover for the gripe Democrats don't dare make publicly, that Barrett won't be an activist justice seeking to read liberals' wish list into the Constitution, the New York Post editorial board writes. And that's not good enough for Democrats who know how unpopular so many of their political dreams are. Judge Barrett has made it clear that her personal opinions would have zero impact on her rulings. Her track record as a federal judge backs that up. Senate Democrats may have no idea how our Constitution works, but fortunately, Amy Coney Barrett does. A judge must apply the law as it is written, not as she wishes it were, she said. America has a government of laws, not of men. This was a very interesting quote that she made. Let's listen.
style of his writing, though. More than the style of his writing, though, it was the content of Justice Scalia's reasoning that shaped me. His judicial philosophy was straightforward. A judge must apply the law as it is written, not as she wishes it were. Sometimes that approach meant reaching results that he did not like. But as he put it in one of his best-known opinions, that is what it means to say that we have a government of laws and not of men.
Whoa, okay, so that's quite huge. We can really have some conversation about that, because a lot of the times it's not black and white either, right? Sometimes you have to really interpret. Yeah, it comes down to interpretation of the law. But maybe a lot of times it is very clear. We'll see. Here's a picture of President Trump disembarking Air Force One. There he is. There were memorandums by the president's physician. This was on October 12th, and this was the president talking about the COVID, his most recent COVID tests. I can share with you that he has tested negative on consecutive days using the Abbott Binax Now antigen card. It is important to note that this test was not used in isolation for the determination of the president's current negative status. Repeatedly negative antigen tests taken in context with additional clinical and laboratory data, including viral load, subgenomic RNA, and PCR cycle threshold measurements, as well as ongoing assessment of vital cultural data, all indicate a lack of detectable viral replication. This comprehensive data, in concert with the CDC's guidelines for removal of transmission-based precautions, have informed our medical team's assessment that the president is not infectious to others. That's wonderful. Here is a memorandum by the president on stopping counterfeit trafficking on e-commerce platforms through fines and civil penalties. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but I will just give you a brief background on this. Trafficking in counterfeit goods infringes on the intellectual property rights of American companies, undermines their competitiveness, and harms American workers. Counterfeit trafficking also poses significant health and safety threats to online consumers. E-commerce platforms serve as key contributors to counterfeit trafficking by acting as intermediaries and providing marketplaces that match up buyers and sellers. It is the policy of the United States, as reflected in Executive Order 13904 of January 31st, 2020, ensuring safe and lawful e-commerce for United States consumers, businesses, government, supply chains, and intellectual property rights holders, to protect consumers, intellectual property rights holders, businesses, and workers from counterfeit goods trafficked through e-commerce. In furtherance of this policy, the executive branch should focus enforcement efforts on e-commerce platforms involved in counterfeit trafficking and should pursue legislation that would clarify and strengthen the executive branch's authority and increase its resources to deter, address counterfeit trafficking on e-commerce platforms. We also have an executive order on modernizing America's water resource management and water infrastructure. Abundant, safe, and reliable supplies of water are critical to quality of life for all Americans, fueling our economy, providing food for our citizens and the world, generating energy, protecting public health, supporting rich and diverse wildlife and plant species, and affording recreational opportunities. While America is blessed with abundant natural resources, those resources must be efficiently or effectively managed, and our water infrastructure must be modernized to meet the needs of current and future generations. You can come to the goldfishreport.blogspot.com and you can read the rest of this executive order. There was a bill announcement also that Senate Bill 490, the B-47 Ridge Designation Act, which designates a mountain ridge in the state of Montana as the B-47 Ridge. Senate Bill 1646, which designates the community-based outpatient clinic of the Department of Veterans Affairs in St. Augustine, Florida, as the Leo C. Chase Jr. Department of Veterans Affairs Clinic, and Senate Bill 4072, which designates the clinic of the Department of Veterans Affairs in Bend, Oregon, as the Robert D. Maxwell Department of Veterans Affairs Clinic. Here is a press secretary from the a statement from the press secretary regarding the national strategy for critical and emerging technologies, which we already read. So if you want to read this, you can go to the goldfishreport.blogspot.com. Essentially, we already discussed this. We're going to, we talked about the executive order on 1 Trillion Trees Interagency Council, which we know the trees are the lungs of our environment. And so this is, you can come here to the blog and you can read about this in more detail. There's also opinion. The president has lowered costs and increased Medicare options by favoring market competition. For almost 4 years, President Donald Trump has promoted reforms to Medicare that favor market competition over Washington meddling. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator Seema Verma write in the Houston Chronicle, "The results are in. America's seniors today enjoy a stronger program that offers more and better benefits at lower costs. Combined beneficiaries have saved approximately $3.4 billion in Medicare Advantage and Part D premium costs since 2017. Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee devoted their opening statements on the Supreme Court nomination of Judge Amy Coney Barrett to repeating a shameless lie. Why can't they share their real reasons for opposing her?" The New York Post editorial board writes. It was all cover for the gripe Democrats don't dare make publicly, that Barrett won't be an activist justice. Read more in the New York Post. U.S. small businesses' confidence rose last month to its highest since the onset of the coronavirus pandemic earlier this year, with more firms experiencing an uptick in foot traffic and sales. The index has rebounded sharply as restrictions imposed on businesses and consumers to contain the spread of COVID-19 have continued easing, Reuters reports. Past vaccines have taken a decade or longer to develop, and more than half over the past 20 years have failed during clinical trials. But 4 vaccine candidates have entered the last phase of clinical trials. Elisa Finley writes, technological breakthroughs that were already in progress got a boost from a bureaucratic one in May when the Trump administration launched Operation Warp Speed. Read more in the Wall Street Journal. An update on Judge Amy Coney Barrett's Senate confirmation hearings. Senate began its confirmation hearings earlier this week for Judge Amy Coney Barrett, President Trump's nominee for Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. The nonpartisan American Bar Association gave Judge Barrett its highest rating of well qualified in a letter sent to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senate Democrats have called the ABA the gold standard in rating judicial nominees. Judge Barrett's outstanding record makes her the perfect candidate for the court. She graduated top of her class from Notre Dame Law School and clerked for the late Justice Antonin Scalia. She has extensive experience across private practice, academia, and public service, including 3 years on the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. She has earned widespread bipartisan respect, such as when every full-time member of Notre Dame Law School faculty wrote in support of her confirmation to the Circuit Court in 2017. She has taught at the law school since 2002. As a mother of 7, Judge Barrett would bring an important perspective as the first mother of school-aged children ever to sit on the U.S. Supreme Court. Most important, as a federal judge, Barrett has already worked faithfully to uphold our Constitution as written. Judges are not policymakers, and they must be resolute in setting aside any policy views they may hold. Judge Barrett said upon accepting President Trump's nomination for the court last month. Senator Lindsey Graham, chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, praised Judge Barrett's exceptional qualifications during his opening statement this morning. I would like the world and the country to know more about Judge Barrett, he said. I'm proud of what you've accomplished. I think you're a great choice by the president. President Trump was clear about why he chose Judge Barrett for this moment. To maintain security, liberty, and prosperity, we must preserve our priceless heritage of a nation of laws, he said. And there is no one better to do that than Amy Coney Barrett. There's more links here if you want to look up more information on this. Come to the goldfishreport.blogspot.com. And finally, we have here before we move on, another memorandum from the president's physician. This was for October 10th, and the press secretary said this evening, I'm happy to report that in addition to the president's meeting CDC criteria for the safe discontinuation of isolation, this morning's COVID PCR sample demonstrates by currently recognized standards, he is no longer considered a transmission risk to others. Now at day 10 from symptom onset, fever-free for well over 24 hours and all symptoms improved, the assortment of advanced diagnostic tests obtained reveal there is no longer evidence of actively replicating virus. In addition, sequential testing throughout his illness has demonstrated decreasing viral loads that correlate with increasing cycle threshold times, as well as decreasing and now undetectable subgenomic mRNA. Moving forward, I will continue to monitor him clinically as he returns to an active schedule, and that was from Dr. Sean Conley. And we continue. Another bill announcement is that today, on Saturday, the president signed the Marauders Congressional Gold Medal Act, which provides for the award of a Congressional Gold Medal to the soldiers of the 5307th Composite Unit Provisional, commonly known as Marauders, in recognition of their bravery and outstanding service in the jungle of Burma during World War II. Okay. Senate Bill 785, the Commander John S. Hannan Veterans Mental Health Care Improvement Act of 2019, which amends a number of VA authorities related to helping veterans transition from military to civilian life, suicide prevention, mental health care research and oversight, and mental health care staffing and health care for women veterans. And the Senate Bill 2661, the National Suicide Hotline Designation Act of 2020, which designates 988 as the universal telephone number of the purpose of the National Suicide Prevention and Mental Health Crisis Hotline. That's 988. We also have beautiful White House photos of the week. You can come to the blog and take a look at that. I'm going to share them just by scrolling past them. But you want to look at them in more detail and know the captions and the places, you can come to the blog and you can take a look at this for yourself. Okay. We have President Trump approves Louisiana disaster declaration after Hurricane Delta. We also have a proclamation on National Charter Counts Week. This is foundation of any free and virtuous society is the moral character of its people. Personal responsibility, integrity, and the other values which define our unique American spirit underpin our system of self-government and inspire us to continue working toward a more perfect union. As we observe National Character, I thought it was Charter, I'm sorry, Character Counts Week, we think of the special individuals in our lives who exemplify the character qualities to which we all aspire. In looking to these examples of honor and virtue, we recognize that character is a learned attribute acquired through consistent, purposeful action, not an inherent trait. We must resolve to build lives and communities grounded in moral clarity in order to strengthen ourselves, our families, and communities, and our nation. You can come here and take another look at this. I'm sorry, I am a little dyslexic, so when I read, I don't always see every letter accurately. So um, I uh, I apologize for that. Proclamation on National Forest Products Week. Our nation's magnificent forests are a source of commerce, recreation, and pride for all Americans. America's woodlands are capable of producing a myriad of products and materials that bolster our economy, improve our daily lives, supply our environment with clean air, and provide countless Americans an escape to hike and relax in a tranquil and picturesque setting. During National Forest Products Week, we appreciate the essential role forests and forest products play in our livelihood and prosperity, and we renew our commitment to maintaining these treasured woodlands for future generations. You can come here and take a look on the blog, read a little bit more about this if you are interested in this subject. We also have the President approves California disaster declaration, again, regarding the areas affected by the massive wildfires that have been occurring there. And 5 stories the president doesn't want you to miss. Twitter's partisan censors. The political actions taken Wednesday by Twitter, and to a lesser extent Facebook, went far beyond normal content moderation. The Wall Street Journal editorial board writes, Silicon Valley's partisan interference flies in the face of American instincts about democracy, fair play, and the spirit of the First Amendment. First Lady Melania Trump, my personal experience with COVID-19. As we previously reported already in this POTUS report, it was 2 weeks ago when I received the diagnosis that so many Americans across our country and the world have already received. I tested positive for COVID-19. To make matters worse, my husband and our nation's commander-in-chief received the same news. First Lady Melania Trump writes. You can, of course, go to our blog earlier, or you can click at this link here, and you can read more about what the First Lady wrote. The Senate should confirm Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court, and quickly. The unfortunate vacancy left by the passing of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg must be filled in a timely manner to continue the important role of the judiciary. The Constitution is clear. The President has a solemn duty to make a nomination for the Senate's consideration. President Trump fulfilled his duty by putting forward Barrett, and now the Senate must do its job, Chase Martin writes. Trump administration announces deal with CVS and Walgreens to administer coronavirus vaccine to seniors in long-term care. President Trump just announced a deal with CVS Health and Walgreens to administer coronavirus vaccines to the elderly and staff in long-term care facilities. Berkeley Lovelace Jr. writes, the vaccine will be free and available for residents in all long-term care settings, including nursing homes and assisted living facilities. Operation Legend, over 5,000 arrests made to reduce violent crimes after a 4-year-old's murder. Since the start of the Justice Department's Operation Legend in July, there have been over 5,000 arrests, including federal offenses, drug charges, and murder charges, Kimberly Eddy reports. Violent crime spiked across major U.S. cities following riots this summer. Kansas City has a 40% increase of homicides compared to last year. President Donald Trump promised to protect cities that have high rates of violent crimes. We also have remarks by President Trump on protecting America's seniors in Fort Myers, Florida. And again, we don't read the transcripts on the blog, so you can go to the on the report, the POTUS reports. So I am going to scroll through this very quickly. I apologize for that. Well, now I'm going to stop scrolling. I mean, I'm going to scroll back up the other direction. Apologize for that. Here we go. Yep, we're going back up so I can get to, and that's it. I think that's why. Okay, I'm sorry, I did get to the end of that there. So that's it. And President is doing he has quite a full schedule this week with regard to his schedule for rallies. There's a schedule that we'll be publishing and probably on our Twitter page that has all of the plans that the president has, all the rallies that he has presently scheduled. And you can go to our Twitter page. I will probably also post it as a link on Facebook as well, possibly YouTube, but we'll see how that goes. But I wanted to thank everybody for watching tonight. I am taking a break from doing my own, from video work. I am still trying to work out some other solutions, but until I get those solutions worked out, I'm going to be here. So let me turn this back on. Okay, right. So until I work out all the solutions to do the video, the digital reports, then I'm, going to be here briefly just to say hello and to say thank you for viewing, and to also say goodbye. So I hope everybody has a great weekend. I want to thank everyone for their support, all the outpouring of support, the wonderful comments that people have made, and a particular comment that someone had made that I do know who you are. I just want to put that note out there. And I think that if according to Governor Christie, if the judiciary police themselves, then it's time for the judiciary to self-correct. You can't be beyond reproach. The judiciary cannot be an absolute power. It must be accountable. And what's happening with Judge Sullivan is an example, perfect example, because no other judges and lawyers, at least publicly, are speaking out against judges who abuse their authority. There is such thing as abuse of authority under color of law. So it's time, if you want the American people to have faith in our judiciary, you need to self-correct. In other words, President Trump's making sure we're going to stop the corruption. And the Justice Department does have some obligation. And there is there is ultimately, the Declaration of Independence, which is really the directions for the American people that if the government comes to destructive means and ends, then it's the right of the people to abolish that government and replace it with a new one. So I just feel like, although people may feel like they have absolute power, they actually don't. And in the end, everybody's going to be held accountable. So I think that everybody, we have to work to form a more perfect union, but we have to admit that we have areas we need to improve on, and that includes the judiciary. So, I did take note of a particular comment that was made that I removed, and I found that, obviously I differed in opinion about the opinion that was left. But I also feel like I was not put in any other position but to take actions that I had taken. And then you can also disagree with that, or you don't have to disagree with it because it's not your choice. It was my choice. But what you can do is you have to accept it. You have to accept that I was forced into those and making those decisions. Not happy about it, but they were made for multiple reasons, which you don't know. So anyway, I'm just going to leave it at that. I want everyone to know that I'm still going to be putting some reports out. A lot of it's going to be a lot of the reporting is going to be just strictly written, so you'll find that of course on the blog, or you're going to find it on Facebook, on Parler, on Twitter, and some very short stories are going to be or short, I would say. um, I wouldn't really say it's a story, but I would say it's a area of research and discussion that we will pursue further on the GoldFish Report in the future. So I will be making comments in the community section on YouTube. So I definitely suggest everybody keep an eye on that for those types of topics that we should all be having a conversation about. And I do plan on continuing these reports in a digital format, although I haven't completed that yet. So it's just that my health had to take priority right now, and I think things are going well with that. So I may not do it for very long, this digital format. We'll see. But I wasn't able to get it done tonight. I have a co-host that's helping me doing this, but as soon as I can get the digital format ready, then I will just do the reports digitally. You'll see how that works out. You might not like the voice on it, but we'll see what happens. It's just that I'm going to need to um, do some treatment so that I can recover from whatever I need to do. And I need rest is what I need to do. So, but I'm hoping I'm not going to create more work for myself this way, because that's what I was trying to avoid. So anyway, everybody, you have a great weekend. Remember, 17 days away. We are 17 days away from this election. So I hope everybody, you know, is very careful, be vigilant. I think whatever happens with this election, well, we know what's going to happen. I do believe Donald Trump is going to get reelected, and I do believe that what we saw happen in Washington and in Kenosha and in other places, that we will see more of that. But I do know and feel very confident that the president does have the Insurrection Act at his disposal, and I do hope and pray that he will utilize it should there be any kind of mass protests or insurrection occurring. So having said that, I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I think we're going to be doing a digital format for Mondays for the political theater, which will only be on BitChute, and of course available to our Patreons. Our Patreons should be getting most of all of our regular reporting, and probably in a digital format too. But so we're doing the best we can, folks. As far as I can, keep up with everything, I will. And again, have a great weekend, and thanks for viewing. This concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report.